Robert Crouch, a famous Canadian writer, defined the Canadian meta-narrative, the grand meta-narrative common to us all, as the absence of a single grand meta-narrative. Canada cannot agree on what their meta-narrative is. For the USA, the American dream is present in all forms of media and literature. 1776 on the Mayflower is easily the founding moment of the USA, while Canadians can hardly agree on a single year. Leotard, one of Crouch's colleagues, believed that Canada is a postmodern country or unwilling to adhere to the meta-narrative. Crouch supports this statement by arguing that Canada is unified through its disunity and holds a great interest in developing a voice for both Canadian writing and identity. This video will explore Ottawa as a cultural institution and how Ottawa is the heart of Canadian identity through the reinforcement of historical, iconic, and linguistic aspects of Canada. Welcome to Ottawa. Right as I exit the number 4 bus at Rideau Centre, I see this. We're made for this. Canada is made for this. Although only the Bay's advertisement for Team Canada clothing, what does the Bay want me to think Canada is made for? I decided to find out. But before I could even begin to think what Canada is made for, Ottawa's continuous portrayal of the 10 provinces and 3 territories brings back Robert Crouch's quote that Canada is not one single meta-narrative, not one single culture. So what is Canadian identity? Well, through my exploration of Ottawa, I believe one way that the city pieces together the Canadian identity is through history. Welcome to the Fairmont Chateau Laurier, a historical site in downtown Ottawa named after the past Prime Minister Sir Wilfrid Laurier. Everywhere you go downtown, you are constantly faced with statues of historical figures, individuals that denote history while connoting the founding values that created modern Canadian society, such as Baldwin and La Fontaine, representing the coming together of English and French Canada, or Thomas D'Arcy McGee, who fought for the coming together of Irish and Canadian national identities. This brings back the importance of Robert Crouch's quote, "Canada is a compilation of many identities." Maybe that is Canadian identity, the ability to accept and tolerate differences. From my view, that's what these statues are reinforcing. Moving away from history for a moment to touch upon the iconic aspects of Ottawa, the Rideau Canal is an excellent example of how Ottawa has redefined a historical site. What was once used for military purposes when there was a fight to control the north of the continent is now used for families to come together and celebrate Canada's cold winter. Skating on the canal and taking part in Winterlude is just one of the ways that Ottawa has reinvented and reinforced what it means to be a Canadian. Finally, I had made my way to Parliament, which is notably the most iconic spot in all of Ottawa. Little to my surprise did I find out that the government offers free daily tours of Parliament. The fact that it is free attracts a wide variety of people to engage and learn more about Canadian history. I started to realize that the tour itself was in a way reinforcing Canadian identity through history. The word work was coming up everywhere during the tour, and it got me thinking about Canada's national animal, the beaver, a hard-working creature. Is this the narrative that Parliament is trying to get me to understand? Possibly to reinforce my knowledge that being hardworking is part of being a Canadian? And so the tour began. Canada's history is embedded within the walls and architecture of the parliamentary buildings, from symbolic figures to historical moments and even hidden images. What is a simple free tour offered by Parliament is also a way in which the country embeds knowledge of Canada's history, founding values that built this country. References to World War I to communicate Canada's leadership on a global scale, always reinforcing core Canadian values of bravery and hard work. Even a simple Parliament tour had a narrative. Standing from one spot outside Parliament in Ottawa, I began to notice the overwhelming number of Canadian flags. It was something I never noticed before, not to mention that viewing this many Canadian flags at once is rare in our country. Unlike the United States, the flag doesn't seem to be something that Canadians embrace, maybe due to the fact that some people still don't connect with this iconic image. After counting, I realized that there were about 26 Canadian flags surrounding me. Alongside iconic aspects of Ottawa, the city reinforces a sense of unity between the two official languages wherever you go. Whether you are reading into history, taking part in some retail therapy, exploring recreational activities, reading signs, or even using the bus system. It's interesting to know that Ottawa offers buses that bring you around the city into surrounding Gatineau area, a prominently francophone region. The reason why the bus system stood out to me was because it represented a simple, peaceful unity between the two official languages, forming one narrative between two cultures. I decided that my interpretation of Ottawa as a source for Canadian identity could only provide one perspective, so I decided to ask people what their views on the topic were. Okay, so why do you think that Ottawa is a hub for Canadian identity?
The seat of where English and French-speaking Canada meet.
Okay, so why do you think that Ottawa is a good representation of Canadian culture?
So Ottawa is a place where almost anyone from anywhere can come in. So from all over Canada, people can come to Ottawa to live and play and enjoy Canada as it is.
To me, Canadian culture is English and French, poutine, Tim Hortons, winter, and I don't know, being polite.
So what do you think Canadian culture is?
Canadian culture, it's for me, it's the outdoors, Algonquin Park, canoeing from east to west coast, in the north, the great freedom. That's Canadian culture for me.
Do you think Ottawa is a good representation of that?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes,
Right.
it is.
So what comes to your mind when you think about Canadian culture?
Hockey, beer and bacon. Hockey, snowshoes, and
Do you think Ottawa is a good representation of that?
definitely.
Canada?
Yeah, what do you think of Canada?
I think of snow and cold and Stephen Harper. Yeah, that's about it.
So what do you believe Canadian culture is?
Team Canada.
Team Canada? That's awesome.
Sure.
Awesome. So why do you think Ottawa is a good representation of Canadian culture?
I think it's a good representation because it combines the old with the new. We see how well they assimilate together and how well we progress when we combine the both of them.
So the old and the new being like the French and English?
Yeah, and like the old government buildings, new government buildings, you know, there's so many new things happening in the world and it's awesome to see such an old place like keeping up with it and actually helping it.
Being French, I think it's a good representation because when I come here I can speak either English or French, everything basically Canadian.
And the fact that even like the University of Ottawa is like both the French and English speaking is too. So what do you think of when you think of Canadian culture?
Beaver tails.
So why do you think Ottawa is a good representation of Canadian culture?
The Parliament Hill, Gatineau Hills, places like that, all the outdoor activities. Just this sort of Canadian thing.
Although my rival school, I couldn't help but visit the University of Ottawa, an institution situated at the heart of downtown that aims to create a unified student body of Anglophones and Francophones. I asked one of the students what their thoughts on the matter was to gain another perspective. So, as a school that supports both the English and French language, do you think that Ottawa is a good representation of bilingualism?
I think that the city really supports the university in its really good learning programs for bilingualism, and I think they have a lot of really good options for people who are choosing to learn French for the first time and also continue and improve their French studies.
Robert Croach was right. Canada was not one single meta-narrative, and clearly we have trouble defining ourselves into a unified story. But I think that's what Canada is. The ability to not be culturally unified, but still find ways to put aside our differences to locate similarities. That's why Ottawa is the heart of Canadian culture. It brings together Anglophones and Francophones, two completely separate languages, and finds simple similarities, such as a learning institution or a bus route. It reinforces Canadian history while connoting the founding values that brought this country to the place it is today. Finally, the city utilizes iconic Canadian images and historic sites, such as the Rideau Canal, and redefines them to fit into an inclusive, modern society. So, although we may not have a narrative, Ottawa's ability to unify through disunity is truly the foundation for Canadian cultural identity.